tecnologia, diciamo, individuata nel caso del riciclo deve essere al suo interno armonizzata a livello europeo. Perché dico questo? Perché nel caso del riciclo abbiamo il paradosso delle etichette diverse per prodotti a seconda del paese in cui vanno, perché in un paese c'è il deposito e ritorno e nell'altro paese c'è la responsabilità estesa del produttore. Diciamo, dobbiamo trovare un punto di equilibrio che consenta a chi ha tela da tessere di tesserla, in modo tale da non continuare a creare balzelli che assomigliano a una sorta di ritorno ai dazi e alle dogane interne, perché quando non hai più il dazio e la dogana, però c'hai la normativa differente sullo stesso tipo di tecnologia, che in quel caso è il riciclo. E aggiungo un elemento di tipo puramente politico, ma che è doveroso sottolineare, perché tu ed io lo abbiamo già dovuto affrontare insieme ad altri colleghi, vedo il collega Fiocchi ed altri che sulla materia degli imballaggi hanno dovuto impegnarsi con noi, e cioè la necessità che venga rispettata la posizione che politicamente il Parlamento assume insieme al Consiglio nella sua funzione legislativa ad esito dei triloghi. È importante che il contenuto che viene assegnato ad una norma attraverso la faticosa procedura democratica di un trilogo venga poi rispettato nelle fasi attuative e quindi nella definizione delle cosiddette linee guida. A volte invece ci ritroviamo a dover ricominciare il lavoro, perché nella fase 2, quella della definizione delle linee guida, vi è spesso un tentativo di recuperare il contenuto della proposta iniziale, quasi che non ci fossero stati 2 anni di negoziati in Parlamento. Allora, questo è un elemento fondamentale di rispetto interistituzionale. La funzione legislativa è assegnata al Parlamento e al Consiglio, e questo è un punto su cui dobbiamo essere anche tra di noi trasversalmente non rigidi, intransigenti, cioè tutelare la nostra funzione. E al termine, diciamo, di questa breve introduzione che completa quella del Presidente, un riferimento ai tanti settori che vedono impegnato il nostro Paese. Qui, siccome è una riunione con molti italiani, ci siamo permessi di fare 2 battute anche nella nostra lingua. Noi abbiamo tanti ambiti industriali che hanno fatto e stanno facendo scuola nel settore del riciclo. Abbiamo citato gli imballaggi, abbiamo il settore dell'acciaio, dove abbiamo generato eccellenze e continuiamo a generarle. Più dell'80% dell'acciaio prodotto in Italia è processato attraverso il cosiddetto nella forma del cosiddetto acciaio verde, quindi non è fatto con alto forno, ma è col ciclo integrale, ma è fatto con forno elettrico attraverso l'utilizzo di rottame. Abbiamo dovuto combattere, e molte delle battaglie legate a questa forma di sviluppo industriale verde le abbiamo perse. Ne faccio un esempio: nel caso del ferro scrap abbiamo tentato in fase di negoziazione della Waste Shipment Regulation di definire il contenimento dell'export del rottame ferroso dall'Europa magari verso altri paesi come la Turchia, che utilizzano quel rottame per fare acciaio che poi esportano in dumping verso l'Europa. Abbiamo tentato di segnalare come quella materia, siamo ritornati sull'argomento nella fase di definizione del Critical Raw Material Regulation o Directive, non mi ricordo, cercando di indicare una lista secondaria di materie prime critiche all'interno della quale inserire il rottame ferroso. In Parlamento la cosa era passata, poi nella fase del trilogo, nel dialogo col Consiglio, la cosa è saltata. Sono tutti elementi di un'agenda politica che recupereremo. Adesso non so come continua, prego. Please.
Sorry, I'm mindful of the time, so I'm going to have to sort of press on. Thank you for an interesting introduction, and thank you, Mr. De Caro, for setting out your idea of the way the debate's going to go in the future. Before I move on to, before I give the floor to Laura Ponti, who's going to give Confindustria's sort of overview of the whole idea of circular economy and what needs to be done and what is being done and the position of Italy, can I just ask very quickly, we had, this might be of interest, during the debate over the packaging and packaging waste regulation, which is very much part of the whole circular economy, area, I was told by people involved in negotiations that it was one of the most acrimonious negotiations and the most heavily lobbied negotiations they've ever been involved in. Can I just ask, since we have a member of the EPP and a member of the S&D sitting next to each other here, do you think that there's going to be harmonious cross-party cooperation when we get to negotiating the Circular Economy Act, or can we expect more acrimony and intense lobbying?
Io credo che ci sarà una collaborazione, anche perché è una legislatura un po' diversa rispetto a quella del passato, quindi io stesso, che appartengo a un gruppo politico che ha delle posizioni diverse da quelle dell'onorevole Salini, comunque non c'è più una maggioranza come quella di prima e quindi c'è un naturale elemento diciamo, di maggiore condivisione di quelle che sono le esigenze un po' di tu. Come dico spesso, la verità non sta sempre da un lato. Questa sembra una legislatura in cui c'è una maggiore collaborazione. Un esempio l'ha citato prima Massimiliano quando ha fatto riferimento al packaging. Ci siamo schierati indipendentemente dai gruppi politici rispetto alla posizione della Commissione con una posizione unica del Parlamento, che era quella di rispettare quello che era avvenuto, era diciamo, il terminale di una discussione lunghissima conclusa con un trilogo sulla questione legata alla plastica nel packaging, e non può, come giustamente ricordavi tu prima, non può la Commissione reintrodurre un elemento che era stato, ci sono gli atti, era stato eliminato nel rapporto con il Parlamento e il Consiglio, reintrodurlo diciamo senza passare nuovamente dal Parlamento. Poi la Commissione può pure decidere di reintrodurlo, ma comunque deve passare dal Parlamento. All'epoca la decisione era quella di escludere quell'elemento specifico, reintrodurlo oggi a chiarimento delle FAQ, delle domande che arrivano dagli Stati membri. Non ci è sembrata un'attività corretta e l'abbiamo segnalato all'unanimità. Credo sia l'esempio di una collaborazione. Sulla resilienza idrica stiamo lavorando insieme. Poi ovviamente ci saranno, come è giusto che sia, ci sono anche oggi in commissione, credo che avrò dei problemi nella riunione con i coordinatori, ci sono posizioni diverse. E cerchiamo però di tenere insieme le posizioni che non devono essere ideologiche, ma devono cercare di risolvere i problemi ai cittadini e alle aziende. Noi stiamo qui perché rappresentiamo i cittadini, che sono a volte aziende, a volte sono lavoratori, sono professionisti. Dobbiamo lavorare per cercare di risolvere i problemi negli Stati membri e non per avere posizioni ideologiche. Poi le posizioni sono diverse. Io ho una posizione diversa rispetto a quella dell'onorevole Sardone, che rappresenta un gruppo importante nella mia commissione, però cerchiamo di trovare soluzioni che condividiamo. Poi non siamo d'accordo su tutto, spesso ci dividiamo.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
If you consider our discussion on packaging, on steel industry and so on, by far you have to understand, we have to understand that often our approach in terms of democratic dialogue is only oriented to the cross-party dialogue. But as you can see, democratic dialogue means often not only cross-party dialogue, but also cross-countries dialogue. And if you consider the last problem in order to interpret the trialogue on packaging, cross-institutions dialogue. This is a new big challenging goal that we have in this moment, not only in terms of good relationship between different political families, but often in order to reintroduce, in order to change also the governance of our European institution, considering the new challenge about the new institutional frameworks in order to define the relationship between, in particular, European Parliament.
Okay, we look forward to seeing what the future of the trilogue process is going to be then in the coming months. Thank you. Can I hand over now, please, to Lara Ponti, who's going to give you a sort of expert's overview of the subject at hand, and from there we'll take on the discussion further. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here. I'm going in the next few minutes to go deeper about what President De Caro and Massimiliano Salini already said. We want to share what circular economy already is for Europe and Italy. We are already leaders in sustainability, resources productivity in Europe is 2.5 times more than global average. But we can go further on this path. We all agree that global economy must shift from linear model to a circular one. Circular production and consumption models contribute to more sustainable resource management, reduce emissions, and the risk of supply chain disruption. We must accelerate circular economy development. Today, we want to show you data, performances, and opportunity for European competitiveness and sustainability. Circular economy is a real industry that grows, saves resources and emission, reduces dependence from external countries. In Italy, in a few years, has grown 3 times faster than Italian GDP, 3.6 versus 1.2%. In 2024, added value was 2.7% of total economy. That means 43 billion. It also created 613,000 new jobs. Italy, as already said, has significant results in efficient use of energy and resources. Resources productivity is 3.6 euro per kilos versus European average of 2.2. Emission intensity is 0.12 kilos per dollar GDP. EU average is 3 times more, 0.32. Energy production is 11.8 euro per kilos versus EU average 9.84. It has increased in 20 years over than 36%. Circularity rate in Italy is 20.8, double the EU average rate of 11.8. Circular industry is a reality already now, but has a big potential still to come. Circular practices in Italy generated savings for 16 billions. That is just 15% of estimated potential. In 2030 could be 119 billion. Italy alone. According to World Bank, European remanufacturing market could grow from actual 31 billion, estimated billion, to 100 billion by 2030. Italian machinery industry is also leader technology in many sustainable processes. Go deeper on data, in sector data. We choose a tough one. Italian steel comes from scrap iron for more than 80%, as Massimiliano Salini said. That means that for every ton we save ore, iron, energy, coal, oil, limestone. And we could save 96% of CO2 emissions. In 2022, Italy packaging recycling rate was nearly 72%, one of the best performer. EU average is 65.4. As you can see by data, recycling saves a huge amount of emissions. For instance, if we reach a recycling rate of 70% for uncollected polymer, in Europe, we'd save 14 billion of tons of CO2. Thanks to these experiences and results, we've collected some key points. A systemic approach beyond single sector is needed, both in industry than in regulation. Industry is already redesigning production and consumption models, but needs standardized framework and regulatory approach at European level. Synergy and symbiosis keep resources in processes and elongate their lifespan. Circular districts create value and save resources. Regulation must support and accelerate their development. Collaboration with university and research center is crucial for innovation and tracking goals. Technology, all kinds of technology, digital, physical, biological, are essential for the transition. Monitoring and optimizing energy use, resources use, and tracking materials towards the digital passport. Circular economy is a good deal, a green good deal, grows the economy and improve the environment, but simplify and standardize. Excess of regulation and bureaucracy means cost overall for small and medium enterprises. Slow down innovation. Industry gave up because of the complexity. Increases reshoring risks because of the cost and the complexity. To build a competitive, sustainable European industry, simplify the regulatory framework. Once again, this is one of our key points. Invest and financial support, again, overall for small and medium enterprises. They need sustainable finance to bridge investment gaps. Support research and innovation. Simplify permitting processes for experimentation. Science and industry learn by mistake, but they have to try. Otherwise, we don't go anywhere. Build a single circular market. Take off burden. Don't change cost tariff in internal tariff made by laws because of the different approach of every country. This is a real burden to innovation. Today with us, we have many other industries that will explain how circular economy already is an opportunity and which are the difficulties they usually in their daily life get into it. I invite you to scan our QR code that we'll give you later to see our report and see more detailed proposal. Our report has been elaborated by all the associates, and it keeps all the best practices Italy has done and what criticisms are and how to pass through them. I just close my little speech just to open the discussion, saying that circular economy is the future. And with our proposal, we ensure that Italy and Europe will lead this changing. Thank you for.
Thank you very much, Laura. Moving on quickly, as I said, the clock is ticking. We've heard now from Mr. De Caro said that simplification needs to be a watchword in this whole process. We've heard the same sentiment from Laura Ponti here. Now we're going to hear from the European Commission in the shape of Mr. Ciobanu sitting next to me here, Aurel Ciobanu. Can you explain, first of all, because we're expecting to see a proposal for a Circular Economy Act at the end of next year. We've just heard of the need for simplification and, you know, harmonization of rules across Europe and cutting the burden for companies, easing permitting restrictions. How do the two, is there a contradiction here? You're introducing yet another piece of complex legislation into the circular economy mix and at the same time aiming to simplify things. How is that going to work?
Thank you very much for the question. I will aim to answer it. But first of all, I would like to thank for the invitation and to express appreciation to Confindustria for organizing this debate here in Brussels. We appreciate a lot the know-how of the Italian enterprises and of the Italian economy in general. And I think this is an important contribution to the overall debate that is taking place around how to make circularity great again. A lot of people focus indeed on the Circular Economy Act, which is a proposal that the Commission aims to bring forward by the last quarter of next year. But I would like to stress here, first of all, that we have, and some of the honorable members of the European Parliament, Mr. De Caro and Mr. Salini, referred to this, to some polemic aspects of this agenda. We have an important agenda when rolling out the implementation of some recently adopted pieces of legislation. Packaging and packaging waste regulation was mentioned here, but we have the waste shipment regulation, we have the eco-design for sustainable products regulation, and we hope very much to have soon the amendments concerning textiles of the Waste Framework Directive, and also the proposal for regulation enhancing circularity in the automotive sector. So a lot of implementing and delegated acts that will be instrumental for improving the functioning of the single market and also circularity in this context are to be delivered under these recently adopted pieces of legislation that we do not aim to amend again by bringing forward the Circular Economy Act. I would like to be clear about this from the outset. The Circular Economy Act is supposed indeed to bring simplification, sometimes by amending provisions in a number of existing directives or reforming them and turning them into regulations, listening to the call of the different industries across the European Union, which refer to the barriers that some directives have left in place because directives require national transposition measures, and sometimes the member states have chosen different regulatory solutions when filling in the space left by the directives. So there will be simplification from this perspective, and we aim at complementarity and supporting the rolling out of the existing legislation. What are the overall objectives of this initiative, and why this initiative actually? And maybe this will cast more light into its logic, onto its logic. Since 15, 20 years, we are taking at the level of the European Union measures to decarbonize our economies and societies and to fight climate change. Most of them have delivered most of the expected results, but we see around us, we see in the indicators of performance that we are not yet there. More measures are necessary in order to become more effective in decarbonizing also hard to decarbonize sectors. On the other hand, we see the strategic autonomy and security more recently challenges around us at global level. We have seen during the COVID crisis, also after the COVID crisis, the weaponization of supply chains by different significant geopolitical actors which control a number of critical resources for the world economy. And we would like to use circularity more and better in order to, in a way, insulate the European economy against the shockwaves that such a weaponization has systematically sent to the European economy as well. So the Circular Economy Act will aim to address these challenges, but there are also more specific issues to be addressed. And one of the most difficult nuts to crack on the front of circularity is the current imbalance between the price of virgin materials and the price of secondary raw materials on European markets. There is a price incentive to use virgin as opposed to recyclate. So can we do something in order to reverse this imbalance in the prices? We will, and I will try to explain some of the instruments that we are having in mind. So we will aim to do so. Also, we notice that there are significant obstacles in the free movement of resources, in particular secondary raw materials across the European Union. We have adopted a waste shipment regulation, but still there are significant barriers. There are also, we see around us, in particular in the last years, in the recent years, particular challenges for the recyclers in the area of plastics, plastic recyclers, textile recyclers, automotive recyclers, recyclers of metals more generally. What can we do in order to support them? And we believe that here the right instrument is not to think about trade restrictions and export restrictions, but to think in terms of how can we create meaningful demand at European level for the recyclates, plastics, textiles, metals, aluminium, and so on. We also see that the single market in terms of critical raw materials, and in particular secondary critical raw materials, is still at the beginning. What can we do in order to advance the development of this market? And not least, we believe that circularity, as Mrs. Ponti has outlined, means also a significant way of saving energy. And we need to take this into consideration as well. So if I were to recapitulate in a single sentence what is the purpose of the Circular Economy Act is by bringing simplification of the rules, including by using more regulations and directives provisions, is to respond to the real needs of the European economy and to the needs which are pointed out to us by different economic operators in a wide array of sectors and by different European associations. So this is not driven by ideology, as some members of the European Parliament sometimes mention when they refer to different provisions, different initiatives brought forward by the Commission, but by the needs of the real life. How can we leverage the instrument of circularity, I mean the tools of circularity, in order to improve the market and economic conditions and to deliver at the same time our ambition in terms of decarbonization and resource efficiency. Let me give just an example, which is, I think, illustrative for the logic according to which we work. We think about steel and we think about aluminium. These are materials which intermediates, which incorporate high amounts of energy. At the same time, we often communicate to the steel or to the aluminum industry the need to decarbonize by moving to hydrogen and to green hydrogen in particular. But, I mean, this is absolutely unchallengeable. This is a long-term objective. However, we have to bear in mind that in order to secure a sufficient supply of green hydrogen for the energy-intensive industries in Europe, some amount of time will be necessary. The prices are very high, and there is no current capacity to deliver as much green hydrogen as the European industry would need. Instead, we submit, and this is proven when you look at the metals, aluminum, circularity is an indispensable first step in that direction. So circularity first, and then decarbonizing by using renewables or green hydrogen or things like this. Not only an indispensable first step, which you leave behind you once you move forward, but an indispensable step which has to remain in the long run here. Because circularity has the ability also to deliver in the long run. So in this context, we will bring forward a legislative proposal that will focus on a number of areas. For instance, how to improve the functioning of the single market of secondary raw materials. And we consider here the radical reform of the rules applicable to waste electric and electronic equipment, a reform of the directive on waste electric and electronic equipment, combined with design measures concerning electric and electronic equipment under the ESPR. So we aim to bring them forward more or less in parallel in order to give a perspective to the IT industries, but it's not just about the IT, I will explain this in a moment, in order to offer a clear and comprehensive approach to the industries which are concerned. IT industry is the first one. Concerned and mostly covered by the current directive, but we plan also not only to turn it into a regulation, but to expand its scope of application, to apply to more modern technologies indispensable for the green and digital transitions, which have been placed on the European market in the last years. We think about heat pumps, for instance, or we think about windmills and even telecommunication equipments, where our attention is drawn by different market operators at European scale, so transnational operators, as there is scope for improvement. We think about the reform of the end-of-waste criteria, which for the moment are delivered through 3 layers of intervention. At regional level, and we believe that it is incomprehensible why this has been put in the Waste Framework Directive to begin with, because this creates obstacles not only at European level, but also within the member states. And we have information according to which this is the case in some of the federal or quasi-federal member states of the European Union. The second level is the national level, the nationally adopted end-of-waste criteria. Here, Italy is a champion. And we think about how we could, use this national potential, indeed, possibly through securing a mutual recognition of nationally adopted end-of-waste criteria, so that the waste which has become resource in Italy is qualified in the same way also in Poland, Germany, or Finland, or Romania. And we think also, and there is a third layer, the European layer, where we are, and we have to admit our shortcomings. We are very slow at European level in delivering uniform criteria for this entire European single market. So what can we do without cutting corners unnecessarily to simplify and to accelerate the capacity to deliver end-of-waste criteria also at European level? And we believe that the combination between the mutual recognition of nationally adopted end-of-waste criteria and the improvement of the European European level should be the solution forward. Another front on which we reflect is how to improve the functioning of the extended producer responsibility schemes, and how maybe to repeal the provisions of the Waste Framework Directive on EPR schemes, the generic provisions, and to turn these provisions into a self-standing regulation. Again, I want to underscore here that our purpose is not to amend recently adopted EPR schemes on textiles, on batteries, on packaging, and maybe one or two others, but to reform the system and maybe to create some additional extended producer responsibility schemes where this makes good economic sense. And again, we have welcomed the messages and the facts and figures that some of the industries have delivered to us. Another front, apart from the single market improvements that we think we could think of, is how to create demand and of recyclates and possibly also of renewable materials such as biomaterials. And I have mentioned already the steel and aluminum that are in our mind. Can we do something more about textiles? Can we do something more about plastics? Maybe about textiles, we should work under the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation in a complementary way with the Circular Economy Act, but maybe for plastics we can do something under the Circular Economy Act. And in addition to this, there are a number of, let's say, satellite measures, maybe not necessarily part of the Circular Economy Act, all of them, some could be part of the Circular Economy Act. I will explain immediately. For instance, we think that we could leverage the instrument of enterprises of public, common public European interest, IPCEI, also in the area of circularity. And because we see the struggles of the plastic recyclers or textile recyclers or metal recyclers, is it conceivable to put at the disposition of the industries, not so much of the member states, such platforms in order to develop transnational hubs for circularity? Can we do something in terms of common procurement platforms at European level made again available to the private economic operators? And more generally, how can we leverage the system of mandatory public procurement criteria in order to create demand as well? So these hubs could be part of the Circular Economy Act. So an example of measures that could be complementary are the measures concerning taxation. Here, our initial vision was more expansive, and we were thinking about, for instance, reducing the VAT for goods and services resulting from circular economy activity, but we have been confronted by our colleagues working on taxation with the ministries of finance of our member states with the stark reality. They told us, look, this is a matter of unanimity, and the member states do not agree to open up the VAT directives, a list of exemptions from the standard rates. So we need to factor in this reality of the unanimity. And we are thinking, what can we improve in terms of taxation applied to secondary raw materials, if we can do something. And more generally, we are reflecting about what kind of additional measures, maybe not all of them regulatory, some of them non-regulatory, but fairly strong, what kind of messages we can offer for stepping up the investments in circularity across the European Union. We are working on a common list of priorities with the European Investment Bank, which may be ready by the end of this year, so ahead of the Circular Economy Act, that should represent a compass for what kind of investments will be prioritized by the Commission in the use of structural funds or what the future structural funds under the next MFF. And the same type of investments should be prioritized in the loan portfolio of the European Investment Bank. But we believe that such compass should send some messages to the private investors, investment funds, and also commercial banks. So this is a little bit the overview of our intentions. Sorry for having taken quite a lot of time, but thank you very much for your flexibility.
And thank you very much for your interesting introduction, everyone. Okay, well, as we said, everybody so far has taken a little bit longer than we would have hoped, but I hope it's all been informative. It's certainly been interesting from my corner of the table. But can I move things on now and invite to the front some representatives of industry who are going to give the perspective from the industrial sector on. Thank you very much to the panelists who I'm going to have to ask to leave the table now. Sorry, but thank you. And please do stick around for the questions and answers. Thank you. So, as the next group of speakers come to the desk, I'm going to briefly introduce them all. We have Marco Mantolassi, who is CEO of Manteco, family business active in the textile sector. If I can ask, no, it doesn't matter. Sit where you like. Emmanuel Katrakis, who is a member of the board of directors of Federec and chair of the International Trade Committee of the Bureau of International Recycling. We have Antonio D'Amato, president and CEO of Sede International Packaging Group and a former president of Confindustria. This isn't an entirely Italian affair. We have Adele Nodi-Chambeau, who's been vice president for EU affairs and head of the EU office at Schneider Electric, a post she took up last year. And we have Per Larschans, sustainability director at, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Ragnar Cells. Without any further ado, we also have Alexander Kessler, Senior Manager for Environment, Technology and Sustainability at the Federation of German Industries, BDI. So, with that, let me open things up. Who would like to start? Shall we start at the end? Down there. Yep, please.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, Mr. Salini, members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this invitation. First of all, I would like to apologize on behalf of my colleague Klaus Oehmann, Managing Director of the BDI Circular Economy Initiative. Klaus couldn't travel to Brussels due to health issues. He asked me to take over his part. And I would like to thank Confindustria for agreeing to this and making it possible. I would also like to congratulate Confindustria for organizing this truly inspiring event. It comes at the right time, opening up the debate on future EU policies on circular economy, which is starting right now, and with the introductions of Mr. Silviano Daudea, I think we can see where things are going. How do we move to circular markets? Germany has voted, and according to reports, a lot is set to change in terms of economic policy. The largest economy in Europe should and must once again become an attractive place for investment and thus a driving force for the European internal market. At the same time, as recently stated in the Clean Industrial Deal, Europe's goal is to maintain sustainable industrial value creation, business models, and attractive jobs in the EU, and to provide new impetus for growth. And this is more important than ever in view of the recent geopolitical developments. Let me take a brief look back. While there has been much controversy and polarization in Germany in recent years, a fairly straight course has been set in the EU. Over the past 5 years, numerous European rules for circular economy value creation have emerged. These have the potential to fundamentally change the framework conditions for companies. 4 major trends are recognizable. First, requirements are now largely issued in regulations that apply directly to member states as well as companies. Second, the EU is establishing a framework along the entire product life cycle, thereby moving away from the traditional end-of-life/waste-centered approach. Third, a strong focus is on specifications for circular product design. And fourth, countless technical rules intended for the circular economy are to be laid down in implementing or delegated acts or standardization in the coming years, so sub-legislative rules will become even more important. The EU must now recognize circular economy as an integral part of its industrial policy. If we want more security of supply with raw materials, less dependence on third countries, more climate protection, and new and innovative value creation, there is no way around circular economy being an integral part of the internal market. There are 3 key areas EU policy should focus on. First, the adopted and upcoming legal acts, such as the eco-design and packaging regulations or the WE and the end-of-life vehicles regulations, must provide a coherent framework. This applies to legal definitions, which may have an overlapping effect on recycled use targets on the market and to possible contradictions in the legal categorization of options such as refurbishment, repair, etc., as waste or non-waste. We need, secondly, a new approach to the concept of waste. Specifically, when does the status of waste begin and when does it end? And above all, which criteria should be applied? If waste is to be a resource across the board, it must also be treated as such, from a risk-based approach at the interface with chemicals legislation to intra-European shipment rules. Thirdly, we're facing a huge implementation task. A large number of delegated and implementing acts and standards are to be established very quickly. They must be realistic and they must be workable. Therefore, transparency must prevail for all relevant stakeholders and they should be able to get involved. After all, these rules will largely determine future investments made by companies. What does all this mean for companies, for industry? It is crucial for companies to anchor circularity in their strategies and work seriously on corresponding business models. This also means that companies and associations must play an active role in shaping the requirements for circular markets, and that national ministries and EU institutions must facilitate this in a transparent and structured manner. In the coming years, it will be key to strike the right balance between rules for fair competition, including market supervision, and well-defined legal framework that integrates market-based instruments and avoids excessive regulations. Regulation, standardization, and freedom for creative solution must go hand in hand. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Mr. Kessler. Can we move on very quickly? And could I ask the guests, the speakers, to stick to 3 minutes if at all possible, because we really do have to get out of the room at 10:30. So thank you. Next up, Mr. Larshan, if you'd like to.
Thank you.
Speak.
I've started the clock. Delegates of the European Parliament, Commission, distinguished people in the room. Competitive circular economy is on the hot topic, and I totally agree. Circularity can solve many of those problems. I will start, would like to recognize from the beginning what Antonio De Cardo said. We need to make sure that we have a water resilient strategy. We need to make sure that we enable access to water and fresh water. I will cover that with the innovations that we are developing. I also like to recognize Lara Ponte's focus on the CO2 dimension. Yes, I totally agree. We can make sure that we reduce a lot of CO2 emissions going forward if we can enable circularity in large scale. Secondly, from the EU Commission, I totally agree. Secondary resources need to be focused on on being produced, and we need to do that with high quality. It means that we need to do large scale and we need to use innovations. That is not possible in today's environment where we have a waste focus instead of a resource focus. We have developed innovations that can extract phosphorus from sewage sludge. Germany are a front runner when it comes to the demand of phosphorus recovery. Europe has been dependent and are dependent on import from Russia and is now back to the same levels as before the war. We know that actions are being taken, but the dependency for the agriculture are very large. We are now producing 2 phosphorus factories, one in Germany, one in Sweden, that will produce a really high quality end product. We're not allowed to sell that product in Europe due to the anti-circular legislation that exists. It means that we will export it to Canada. Next Friday, we have the Canadian ambassador to Sweden, together with our partner for Canada, visiting our research center, and they will take the next step. Of course, we would like to sell the phosphorus in Europe, but please make sure that we can sell it based on quality and not origin. And last week, I also had a delegation from US visiting us with a list of 176 different sites where we can set up phosphorus factories in US. So my question to the commissioner, where will the next 50 phosphorus plants be built? In Europe or outside of Europe? We are ready, but we need to have the right conditions. Secondly, from the water, we have developed innovation that can extract nitrogen, ammonia from wastewater, where it is a problem. The problem is that the wastewater treatment plant can't use our innovation because they can't procure it. Today's wastewater treatment plant has the obligation to do bad things less bad. They are not obliged to produce resources. By extracting the ammonia, the nitrogen, and produce a nitrogen fertilizer, they will also boost the energy production. Today I had 3 minutes. Last week I had 90 minutes in the UK Parliament only about our nitrogen innovation. I would love to continue the discussion, but my time is out. And we have more innovations where we also use CO2 as an input, but we can't source the CO2. And that will reduce the dependency of Chinese magnesium to that Europe can start exporting magnesium. So please, I'd love to come back and give more details about these potential. And please make sure that we can go into a circular economy where resources are in focus and not minimizing waste.
Thank you very much, Mr. Larsens. As you suggested, we could certainly use several more hours to discuss this topic, but we do have to keep things short. I have one quick request from MEP Pietro Fiocchi, who has asked for the floor for 1 minute. So if you could please...
Sorry, but I have to run in the commission, but there are 2 topics for Confindustria and generally speaking, the industry in Europe. Number 1, do you find okay that a company in Brescia finds cheaper to send its metal scrap to Turkey, ship, truck, come back, and so on and so on and so on, and it's cheaper than recycling iron in Brescia? This is crazy. I think that the European Commission needs to jump on this. In terms of what Confindustria can do, we have to realize that Europe is dependent from everything, but I do not see any strong advance in recycling lithium, cobalt, rare earth, and everything else. So do we want to do this? Do we want to invest in this? Do we want to bring back also intellectual property and some strategic production like microchips and everything else? So this is a really tough question. Sorry, I'm bringing it to you, but I think that Europe needs to take a very strategic decision because otherwise we die. Thank you very much. Thank you for the organization. Sorry if I jumped in like this, but...
That's quite all right. And thank you for raising the issue of critical raw materials, which is certainly at the center of the debate at the moment. So moving on, Adèle Naudie-Chambaud of Schneider Electric, please.
Good morning. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. I represent Schneider Electric, the tech leader in energy management and industrial automation, but I'm also here on behalf of FIEC, which is a member of the French Business Federation, MEDEF, and gathering 25 trade associations in electronic, electrical, and digital technologies. So my first message, circular economy is not new to our industry. The electronic, the electrical industry have been very much involved for many years in circular economy. And if I take the example of Schneider Electric, is based on 4 strategic dimensions: design and innovation, use better, use longer, and use again. And with that in mind, there are 3 key messages I'd like to share today. There are many others, and that's from also the point of view of a manufacturer. So 1, the design phase needs to be at the heart of the circularity. And that's from, again, a manufacturer point of view. And this is for resilience, to reduce our dependency, and to be more resource efficient. So we need a true resource policy to address our supply chain vulnerabilities, and building also on the Critical Raw Material Act that has been adopted. And on this also, we believe that EPR schemes have a key role to play, also to look to bridge on and address our vulnerabilities. Design phase is important because 80% of a product environmental impact is influenced at the design phase. So it's 80%. Second, it's important also to look at the operation to expand the lifespan of products, because this is also a way to create new business opportunities. So here we need a policy to support the extension of lifespan. I've heard about reducing taxation, financial incentive, but this is important also at member state level. This can be done by also providing services to keep products in use as long as possible. At Schneider, we have our own services called EcoFit, and it shows that we can extend the lifespan of product up to 25%. It's also about using again by recirculating products, parts, and material. Here we have also some Schneider Electric example. On our circuit breakers, we have our own plant in Europe where we take product at the end of life, we disassemble them, we upgrade them, we diagnose them, we put them back on the market so they have a second life. And then the third point is about having a robust single market for circular economy. That was made by many of the speakers today. For our industry, it's about harmonization and implementation. This is key. We cannot have 27 approaches to legislation that is adopted at European level. We have good example at the ESPR, one framework with also a product route approach, and this is really the way forward for us. And last, a very important point that we hope will keep being addressed in the Circular Economy Act, it's about market surveillance. We need to make sure that we have a fair level playing field, fair competition in the single market for European companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Katrakis, please. Sorry to rush straight on.
Yes, good morning. Honorable members of the European Parliament, Mr. Salini, the Commission, ladies and gentlemen, I'm extremely pleased to be here today. I'm going to try to stick to 3 minutes. I'm speaking on behalf of FEDEREC, which is the French Recyclers Association, which is also a member of EURIC, the European Recycling Confederation, and which works obviously closely with Confindustria. I work for a recycling company. It has been discussed already a lot. It's steel recycling, aluminium recycling, copper recycling, plastic recycling, and other non-ferrous metals, based in Belgium, but with a very strong footprint in France and also to a lesser extent in the Netherlands. I think it has been said, Europe is at a crossroad. The circular economy agenda is also a reindustrialization agenda, and when it comes to recycling, we can tick both 2 or 3 boxes. We are creating local jobs. We are saving CO2. It has been said now it's 60% for steel, 70% for 17 to 85% for plastics, depending on the polymers, and then over than 90% for basically aluminium. We have a number of issues to tackle. First of all, today we are at 12% of circular material use rate. So basically, despite 10 years or 15 years of a lot of work in terms of resource efficiency roadmap, circular economy plans, we are still more or less at 12%. It's twice better than the rest of the world, but we very much obviously support the fact that that target is deemed to be doubled in the new Circular Economy Act, and obviously in the Clean Industrial Deal has been said the objective is to double this circular material use rate, and to do that we need a few basically measures. They have been said, but I think they are very important to emphasize. First is to boost the demand for recycled materials. There is indeed a price issue when you are recycling basically materials. You are saving CO2, you are saving energy, but your cost structure has nothing to do with the cost structure of extracted raw materials, be it for plastics, be it for metals, be it for the rest. So boosting the demand is absolutely essential, otherwise going to be very difficult to compete. Point number two, it's simplifying procedures. And here as well, it has been said, we need to clarify when waste is to be a waste. If waste is a resource, we can no longer have in Europe 27 basically different statuses for waste. We do have already end of waste for a few materials, but for the vast majority of materials, we do not have end of waste. So we need to make sure that we have an internal market that is compatible with the circular economy, going faster with end of waste, going faster with simpler procedures. And I'm going to take a very practical example. For building a mechanical recycling facility, state of the art, today in the north of France, despite a lot of support, it took us 10 years to get all the permits. 10 years. It's way too long. It has also been discussed a lot about, the issue linked to basically steel and plastics. Those are completely different issues, so I'm going to conclude with that. Plastics, the main problem is massive influx of plastics which are being labeled as recycled, even though we do believe that there are virgin plastics which are being labeled as recycled. We do have here a problem with the custom codes, which makes no distinction between virgin polymers imported and basically recycled polymers. So we need to make sure that our custom codes is also circular proof, and that's very important. Recycled steel. Over the last 10 years in Europe, the consumption for recycled steel scrap has dropped by 10 million tons. So obviously it explains why there has been a exactly proportional increase of those exports. But if we want to be able to use basically more recycled steel scrap in Europe, we need to have a model like in Italy. In Italy, 80% of the steel is made via electric arc furnaces. In Turkey, it's 70%. 70% in the US. We need to make sure that we are going to go faster with recycled content targets for steel. Pragmatic ones, very pragmatic, but very important to create more demand. That's absolutely essential. And also restore the competitiveness factor for energy-intensive industries. The biggest problem today for energy-intensive industries, which are our customers, aluminum smelters, steel mills, are energy prices. The difference on energy prices, which is also hurting recyclers, is too big. So this is really important. And I'm going just to conclude by that because I think, we don't need more trade restrictions. We need more policy on demand to incentivize demand for circular products and circular materials. Our company, Gallo, we worked on developing a new technology to have higher quality for our recycled steel, so low level of contamination in what we produce. We try to find a local partner in northern France because this is based in northern France. We looked for months. We couldn't find. We obviously were very proactive in reaching out to companies. Guess where we found our partner today to test the quality of our recycled steel scrap? In Italy. So Mr. Salvini was discussing about cross-party, cross-country. Now I'm going to say cross-corporate, cooperation. But we really believe that the solution is not more trade restriction, is more cooperation and also boosting the demand. That's absolutely essential. Also for R&D, because what we are doing today costs millions of euros, and we did the same for aluminium with artificial intelligence, laser-induced based sorting, 15 million euros to have very high quality recycled aluminium that we recycle by type of alloy to anticipate the future demand for aluminium smelters in Europe. But obviously we still need to have access to international markets, though we invest to have higher quality recycled materials in Europe. Thank you.
And thank you. We're certainly getting the message here that there's a certain level of dysfunction in the markets for recycled raw materials. even to the extent of Mr. Larchan's saying earlier that the current legislation was anti-circular. Food for thought, perhaps. Let's move on now and perhaps get a view from the textile sector from Mr. Mantelassi.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Marco Mantelassi, and I'm very honored to be here in front of you and to get your invitation. I am the CEO in Manteco, which is an important player for all the fashion industry and textile. Our company started more than 8 years ago, and our DNA is completely circular. My grandfather started from a blanket, started from old clothes in 1943, and since 30 years, myself and my brother Matteo are carrying over the business and put the business into a different level, in a luxury level. So we are able to recycle most of our wool and cashmere, and we are able to reprocess it in a new fiber and put it into a luxury kind of textile and luxury business. We are processing more than 1,300,000 kilos of wool and cashmere, and we are producing about 8 million meters per year of our textile fabrics. We became a brand into brands, and we are able to give to the fashion world all the scientific numbers that they need in order to prove their sustainability approach and their approach system into the circular design. We are working 100% in Tuscany. We give the work to about 1,100 people, and we work with 60 different players, companies that are working for us. We are very honored to tell that there is a big future in the recycle system. We take advantage from that, we scale the business, and we put ourselves into a position of leaders in the world. We can recycle the same fibers up to 6 times in a closed loop and more time in open loops. And we are able to put this recycled fiber in a luxury approach to give a lot of upscale to what we are producing every time. I think this is very important because recycling doesn't mean poor material, but means to scale and to put up the business into a more defined and luxury business. I think and I hope that the new regulations are coming more towards the chemicals recycled fibers, giving the chance to allow a new scale in the design district and design fashion world, but also to give the chance to reuse the fibers. As of now, the regulations are the same for virgin and recycled fibers. And if there is no chance to look forward to a change into the industry, to a change into the chemicals, it's going to be difficult. We have to give more time to the recycle to be judged, because we cannot apply the same rules. And this is so much important to go ahead into a new world of the new design, to the design level.
Thank you very much. A message we're certainly hearing here today is that we need to incentivize the use of recycled materials over raw materials, which can often be cheaper at the moment, which is one of the complicating factors here. Last but not least, in the panel of industry presentations, we're going to hear from Antonio D'Amato, President and CEO of the SEDA International Packaging Group, who's presumably been rather busy over the past couple of years. Please.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone. I want to thank first and foremost Mr. Salini for having organized this event, hosted this event, and Confindustria for having promoted this. Honorable members of the Parliament, representative of the Commission, I think this is a great opportunity for facing one of the most strategic chapters that we have in front of us. Europe is facing the most disruptive time since World War II. And we're facing this disruptive time also with a state of the industry in Europe, which is the most critical of the latest decades. We're facing a structural industrial crisis in Europe, which is a consequence of a too long prolonged lack of industrial policy. And if this is a major concern for all of the industries in each and every sector, in each and every member state in Europe, there is only one point of comfort among all these major crises that we are facing, that there is only one very strong competitive advantage that we can claim after having lost the base industries, after having lost priority and leadership in most of the technologies and sectors and research and development over the past 20, 25 years. The only area where we are really competitive and we're really leading the world is on circular economy. And this made also possible for Europe in the latest 30 years to reduce drastically the amount of CO2 emissions. Not only we represent 6% of the total emission of the globe, which somebody may say, yes, because the others which were not emitting before, now they have more emission. No, if we see the other number, the amount of emissions per capita since 1990 up to now have been reduced from over 30% and more, which means that the circular economy played a fundamental role in making this possible. And circular economy is the way how we can continue to pursue economical growth, strong industrial policy, and sustainable planet by granting also the needed social bond. And what we see today, making more critical also the political scenario in Europe, is the strong polarization which is coming once we start putting in crisis the middle class as an impact, as an effect of loss of jobs, especially in the manufacturing industry. This is a lesson that we shouldn't forget since the last century, when the middle class and the working class are going under stress. We know what are the horrible consequences that we are going to pay. So that's the reason why I think we need to see this as a great opportunity to reshape industrial policy. And that's the reason why we need to also be very mindful about what we do in order to really reinforce what we have done over the past decades on implementing and supporting circular economy. We have done a lot. There is more to do. We have also to recognize that we have some leading member states, and we have other areas of Europe where circular economy is not yet fully implemented at the same level. And this is the first area where we need to really go and see what we can do better. On the other hand, we need also to be very mindful of what can be the unintended consequences that an over-regulation can bring also in the different directive and regulations on a negative side on the circular economy. Our moderator was before mentioning the acrimonious process of the packaging and packaging waste regulation, which started in a very critical way and ended in a much more positive approach. And let me say that as an industry leader, our group is is one of the major food packaging manufacturers in Europe, manufacturing in different countries in Europe and in the US. And as an industry representative leader, I've been attending and participating actively to each and every packaging directive since the first one. And through a very positive and proactive cooperation between the European institutions, member states, and industry, we have been able to achieve and overpass targets which, when we started in the mid-90s, were completely inconceivable. To the degree that we have now, today, the highest rate of collection and recycling in most of the European countries, already passing by far the target set for the European Commission for 2030. Now, this strong cooperation had a very critical stage when PPWR in the past legislative term started. The process has been painful and has been critical. And the reason is it didn't start on the same foot of the cooperation that we had in the previous decades, where at that time, member states, European Commission, and industries were fully committed on approaches which were based on science evidence, on proper LCA, and on a cooperative dialogue, which was completely free of ideological approaches. I don't want to claim anything about what can be considered ideological or not, but for sure, the assumptions which were based on some of the original proposals that led to the original text of the PPWR were, thanks God, completely defeated and changed also by the job done by GRC. And on top of this, multiple industry and member states positions, which led today to a position which was significantly different, proving that when the dialogue and let's say the process of democratic confrontation within the parliament and among the members can really go in the right direction. Now, what we are facing for the future? We are facing for the future the challenge of continuing to define the way forward to reinforce circular economy, but we need also to understand that there are multiple trade-offs which should be considered. If we go back to the packaging, I'm going to conclude. At the start of the process was completely undermined the meaning and also the social and the environmental impact of packaging, especially for food. And the trade-off was, let's say, prospected in a way that the food packaging seemed to be the enemy to fight. Now, food packaging provides an enormous contribution in reducing food waste, which accounts for over 10% of the global emission of the planet, provides an enormous contribution in reducing water stress, makes food available where food is not at the consumer, let's say, rich. And we know that human hunger is one of the most critical matters still today. Over 750 million citizens of the world are hungry. And this is a huge issue, social issue. And let's say the environmental impact of a properly designed packaging can be an enormous contribution to also protect human health, at the same time, what is critical for the environmental, let's say, balance. So what I mean is we need to be careful about how we tackle sensitive issues. We have a past track record of success. We have a long way to go in order to keep improving, but we need to be able to understand that prohibiting and over-regulating may have an enormous disruptive impact also on the circular economies industries that we build over these 30 years, which are employing millions of workers, which are requiring billions of investments, which are also generating an enormous development in new raw material, new science, new research, new developments. And if we don't stop over-regulating and prohibiting, most of these investments will disappear, most of these jobs will disappear, a lot of these industries will be completely disoptimized. Therefore, I think we require all of us to work in a very strong cooperative approach, because circular economy is the competitive advantage which can rebuild also a strong season of reindustrialization of Europe.
Thank you very much. A clear call against over-regulation there. Now, we're honored to have the Italian Minister for Environment and Energy Security, Gilberto Pecetto Fratin, with us. So, because I need to move on very quickly, can I ask? Sorry?
We move?
Please. Yeah, we're going to invite some more people to the front. You'll have an opportunity to answer some questions, but we need to flip things around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So if I can please invite to the table at the front, Mr. Fratin, Italian Minister for Environment and Energy Security, and Emanuele Orsini, President of Confindustria. Who is going to give us some closing remarks after the Minister has spoken. So Please, Mr. Fratin, please.
Innanzitutto grazie, io parlerò in italiano e io ringrazio naturalmente Confindustria nella persona del presidente Orsini e della struttura di Confindustria italiana per questa importante iniziativa, questa messa a punto delle nostre posizioni, le posizioni italiane, la posizione di Confindustria e l'opportunità di esprimere questo saluto da parte del governo italiano in questa importante sede di rappresentanza ai popoli europei. Quindi io sono convinto che l'azione che dobbiamo portare avanti come governo, come mondo produttivo, debbano confrontarsi quotidianamente anche con quello che è il cambiamento del quadro geopolitico internazionale, degli sviluppi delle tecnologie, della capacità di resilienza del sistema europeo, e in questo caso del sistema italiano, della nostra economia e in particolare dell'economia di un paese che storicamente non ha enormi materie prime, ma la più grande fonte di materie prime ce l'ha, come illustrava precedentemente Antonio D'Amato, dal proprio giacimento di riciclo e di riuso dei propri beni. In questo caso il nostro paese sul fronte è un laboratorio di eccellenze, non solo per mettere in campo quelle che sono la difesa degli interessi del paese, ma per sostanziali contributi che può dare nell'ambito della politica europea, della definizione delle direttive, della definizione dei regolamenti, per un'Europa migliore, non solo un'Italia migliore, e affinché la valutazione su quelle che sono le azioni non sia una valutazione di penalizzazione, ma bensì una valutazione di opportunità per la crescita delle nostre economie. Quindi oggi devo dire sono lieto di constatare che le raccomandazioni elaborate dal nostro sistema industriale, dalla nostra industria, siano perfettamente in linea con quanto abbiamo già avuto modo di rappresentare come contributo del nostro paese ai lavori in corso per la definizione sul tema dell'economia circolare, del Circolare Economy Act. Siamo pertanto allineati, istituzioni, mondo produttivo, in un impegno concreto per l'Europa, ed è un impegno che io riconosco a tutti loro, riconosco al lavoro quotidiano dei nostri imprenditori, dei nostri lavoratori, che consentitelo vale molto più che alcune manifestazioni di piazza o di facciata che possono esserci. L'esigenza di normative chiare ed omogenee. Il tema dell'omogeneità a livello europeo è il tema che era stato posto alla base nel 1957 della Comunità Economica Europea, che significa tenere conto di tutti i territori, di tutte le caratteristiche dei territori, delle modalità di crescita, dei tanti mondi che l'Unione Europea rappresenta. L'Unione Europea ha 27 stati e naturalmente significa garantire comparabilità, replicabilità, armonizzazione di quelli che sono i requisiti tecnici e giuridici di percorso per raggiungere l'obiettivo. Quando parlando della parte di economia circolare si tratta di requisiti tecnici a partire anche dai sottoprodotti, dalle materie prime secondarie, dai criteri ambientali minimi che dobbiamo definire per tutta la parte anche di appalto. Inoltre noi ci facciamo promotori di un riconoscimento reciproco di tutte quelle che sono le definizioni tra i vari paesi dell'Unione Europea. auspicando regole più semplici, più chiare, che abbiano lo stesso criterio di lettura su tutti i 27 paesi. Questo perché siamo anche nell'ambito mondiale il quarto paese esportatore, quindi è nostro interesse avere il massimo della semplicità nel modello di comunicazione e di garanzia a tutela dei cittadini e delle imprese. Questo sia sul fronte delle tecnologie, ma anche su tutto il fronte dei prodotti finali. Quindi i termini che vengono utilizzati, recupero, riciclaggio e regole comuni, sono per noi fondamentali e vanno definite anche rispetto a quelle che sono le regole tecniche e regole fiscali sul sistema della gestione, della specificazione e certificazione che hanno come obiettivo finale il 2050, naturalmente il net zero, che è per l'Unione Europea, che naturalmente lo è per il nostro paese, un obiettivo di brand, un obiettivo di vittoria rispetto alle altre, al resto del mondo, cioè quello che deve essere il nostro obiettivo di un paese che ha costruito le proprie condizioni di benessere sulla propria inventiva, sulla propria capacità di innovarsi e sulla propria volontà di produrre, quindi anche di impegno delle proprie maestranze, delle imprese delle proprie maestranze, è quello che deve contraddistinguerci. Vogliamo che contraddistingua l'Italia, vogliamo che contraddistingua anche l'Europa rispetto al mondo. È chiaro che è cambiato il quadro complessivo rispetto a 5 anni fa. Siamo all'inizio di una nuova legislatura, siamo ai primi passi della nuova Commissione, rispetto a quelli che erano 5 anni fa è cambiato il quadro di scenario complessivo, quello che è cambiato il modello economico a livello mondiale, nei commerci, nella geopolitica, negli equilibri, siamo in presenza di guerre ancora in ambito europeo, siamo in presenza di guerre e di momenti difficili in ambito del Sud Europa, del Mediterraneo, di cui noi siamo parte integrante perché siamo in mezzo al Mediterraneo, e anche quello che è il percorso che era stato avviato nel 2019 con l'inizio dell'attività della Commissione del Parlamento precedente, va naturalmente adattato a quella che è la nuova realtà anche internazionale che va al di fuori dell'Europa. Questo significa quindi non mettere in discussione quelli che devono essere gli obiettivi finali, che sono gli obiettivi sotto l'aspetto di deleghe anche di net zero, di presa di coscienza di quello che è il cambiamento climatico a livello mondiale. Quindi l'Italia è uno dei paesi che più di altri soffre il cambiamento climatico. I 3 gradi in più del Mediterraneo creano una situazione di difficoltà notevole, non solo nel grande cambiamento rispetto alla struttura di biodiversità, ma anche proprio rispetto alle azioni che dobbiamo mettere in campo per raggiungere gli obiettivi di decarbonizzazione. E quindi si tratta di adeguare quello che è il percorso, il passo delle strutture europee con quello che può essere il passo dei singoli paesi, dei 27, e naturalmente questo determina una ricaduta e la necessità di innovazione da parte del sistema delle imprese. 2019-2020 erano ante Covid, ante grandi crisi dell'energia, ci siamo resi conto di quanto devastante sia stato l'effetto dell'esplosione a seguito della guerra in Ucraina, della crisi energetica, quindi con i prezzi che hanno rischiato e di cui continuiamo a avere una conseguenza di minare il sistema economico della vecchia Europa e naturalmente anche la realtà italiana, e la necessità di avere obiettivi sempre ambiziosi ma non totalmente ideologici. Mi riferisco all'azione al Fit for 55. Il for 55 non faccio mistero di non aver mai di condividere totalmente l'obiettivo di decarbonizzazione, di non condividere assolutamente il metodo utilizzato che fa riferimento allo strumento, perché è ferma mia convinzione che la parte politica difficilmente riesce ad individuare con certezza qual è la tecnologia 15 anni dopo. E lo dico da convinto assertore che il veicolo dell'elettrico e del motore elettrico è veicolo principale, perché il motore elettrico è il più semplice da produrre, ma non poteva essere una posizione europea a imporre la tipologia tecnica, ma bensì imporre l'obiettivo di decarbonizzazione e quindi al limite imporre l'obiettivo di emissioni zero, non lo strumento per l'emissione. Ma noi dobbiamo comunque andare avanti, agire su questo percorso, naturalmente con l'adeguamento e le correzioni che ritengo necessarie, così come dobbiamo andare avanti sul fronte del riciclo, della modernizzazione delle nostre azioni rispetto al fronte della discussione di APR in questo momento totalmente aperta, anche su quella che è il contenuto delle definizioni proprio, che devono essere leggibili da ogni fronte. Quindi la necessità che noi che manifestiamo di essere realistici, di essere pratici, di rendere possibile ad ogni paese europeo la possibilità di avere la stessa lettura di quelle che sono le azioni della Commissione, dell'Unione Europea, non della Commissione, del risultato dei triloghi. E quindi credo che l'essere nella sede del Parlamento Europeo significa anche dare davvero questo messaggio a coloro che rappresentano totalmente i cittadini europei, ognuno rappresentandoli tutti, perché io in questo momento rappresento il governo italiano, ma i miei colleghi, vedo il collega Salini e altri colleghi, rappresentano invece il 500 miliardi di cittadini europei, e questa è l'importanza anche di questa differenza e l'importanza di portare, come fate voi di Confindustria, caro Presidente, quelle che sono le istanze di un grande paese industriale, di un grande paese, del secondo paese manifatturiero d'Europa in questa sede. Per questo io vi ringrazio del contributo che voi portate, degli atti che mi farete naturalmente avere, che saranno elementi di valutazione e di supporto per quella che sarà la politica nazionale e anche le posizioni nazionali in ambito di Consiglio europeo e naturalmente buon lavoro a tutti. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think many will take heart from your commitment to the goals of net zero and so on. I think the debate is going to be a question of how rather than what, perhaps, in the coming months. Thank you. Now, for the closing remarks, please let me hand over to Emanuele Orsini. Thank you.
Grazie mille. Continuerò in italiano. So che dobbiamo lasciare la sala alle 10:30, proverò a fare un riassunto velocissimo. Intanto grazie Ministro, grazie agli europarlamentari presenti, grazie anche ai rappresentanti delle commissioni e agli imprenditori comunque che sono arrivati dall'Italia e ai media, perché io credo che oggi provo a fare un ragionamento che secondo me è un ragionamento che ringrazio anche il Ministro, perché alla fine ha aperto non solo l'economia circolare ma su alcuni altri capitoli che ovviamente in Italia ci interessano.
E riprendo Antonio D'Amato quando parla di competitività sul ragionamento che comunque già abbiamo diversi settori che stanno subendo e stanno impoverendosi per mancanza di competitività verso altri continenti, invece l'economia circolare ovviamente per noi è un vanto di competitività verso il mondo. E quando io mi sono scritto un po' di dati, perché alla fine io credo che dai dati noi dobbiamo parlare, che visto che, e parlo dell'Italia, l'Italia oggi ha raggiunto nel 2021 gli obiettivi che si è posto l'Europa nel 2030. Ma come se li è posti? Se li è posti perché c'era l'oggetto ma non aveva il vincolo dell'utilizzo della tecnologia per poterci arrivare. E l'Italia ha saputo dimostrare, ma anche l'Europa, che quell'oggetto lo si poteva raggiungere mantenendo la neutralità tecnologica, e siamo riusciti a costruire un percorso che è quello virtuoso riconosciuto da tutto il mondo. Quando Antonio Donato diceva prima, me lo sono segnato e gliel'ho chiesto 2 volte, un risparmio del 30% pro capita dal 90 al 2025 sul riciclo, io credo che questi siano dati fondamentali diciamo di emissione, cioè quindi un 30% di emissione, sono dati per noi fondamentali. Un altro dato che mi viene, che per poi arrivare all'altro ragionamento, che da ogni chilo di prodotto riciclato l'Italia è riuscita a generare 3,6 euro di PIL, confronto alla media europea di 2,2 media di PIL. Io credo che questi siano dati che comunque confermano il fatto che l'industria italiana e europea sia vicino all'ambiente. È vero tema però che sono uscite diverse nelle argomentazioni, ringrazio anche i 5 relatori, gli imprenditori che sono venuti a portare le proprie esperienze, perché io credo che si è parlato di energia, che è un altro tema di competitività, e anche Antonio De Caro nel passaggio, e poi dopo anche Massimiliano, quando parla di energia e all'interno per poter essere competitivi nel ragionamento e per poter fare economia circolare, ovviamente anche il costo dell'energia. De Caro dice che il costo dell'energia è 15 euro e purtroppo per speculazioni finanziarie siamo a 140-150 euro. Ma allora io mi pongo, e questa è la sede giusta, ma sui TTF com'è possibile che ci siano 5 aziende non vigilate che oggi speculano sul costo del gas che impatta sul costo dell'energia? È ovvio che questi sono temi di competitività. Poi è ovvio che quando si tocca, e quando Massimiliano dice sul tema del riciclo è stata fatta una discussione parlamentare, è stata fatta una discussione in commissione, è stato il trilogo, ha passato la discussione e oggi si pensa di ritornare a provare a modificare ciò che si è posto. Diventa un problema istituzionale perché a quel punto la politica perde verso ciò che comunque deve essere la norma pensata per poter aiutare i paesi nel ragionamento che è stato fatto e costruito. Quindi su questi temi noi non possiamo, ovviamente mi riferisco agli imballaggi. E sull'automobile tocco, perché poi alla fine corro veloce, mi mancano 2 minuti, sul tema dell'automotive che ha toccato il ministro Pichetto Frattini. Io credo che anche su questo è ovvio che se siamo riusciti a dimostrare che il principio è quello, senza nessun vincolo di utilizzo di tecnologia, abbiamo saputo rispondere all'economia circolare, la stessa cosa mantenendo gli oggetti che si pone la Commissione europea e il Parlamento europeo, dobbiamo togliere i vincoli di utilizzo delle tecnologie e utilizzare la neutralità tecnologica, perché solo quella può essere la via per poter dare per ogni settore la risposta che comunque l'Europa e i nostri paesi si pongono. Perché se non si va su quello, alla fine il rischio è che noi perdiamo di competitività, e lo stiamo già facendo e sta già succedendo verso gli altri continenti, cosa che oggi non ci possiamo permettere. Come, visto che sappiamo, e tu hai toccato un altro tema che a me è molto caro purtroppo in questo periodo, la guerra dei dazi, perché quando si parla ovviamente di essere il 4º paese esportatore al mondo come Italia vuol dire essere preoccupati di ciò che succede. La guerra dei dazi a noi preoccupa, perché ovviamente quando noi esportiamo 626 miliardi di prodotto siamo riusciti a mantenere la nostra esportazione calandola di 4 miliardi poco, nonostante tutto quello che ci è successo attorno, vuol dire che siamo stati dei campioni internazionali per poterlo fare. Però anche questo, su questi temi l'Europa ovviamente deve essere compatta e unita per poter negoziare immediatamente ovviamente la capacità di poter avere un libero scambio verso altri paesi. E anche su questo dobbiamo stare attenti perché ci sono i dazi, ma ci sono anche le norme che sono peggio dei dazi che comunque impongono ai nostri prodotti di poter essere o arrivare a destinazione. Quindi io chiudo, ringrazio Lara perché ovviamente ha portato questo ragionamento e questa riflessione Lara Ponti del fatto che comunque se siamo riusciti a ottenere senza nessun limite di utilizzo di tecnologia gli obiettivi preposti, io credo che quella sia la via e afferma il fatto che la neutralità tecnologica sia la risposta giusta per i prodotti del futuro. Grazie.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're going to have to wrap up, I'm afraid. We didn't have time for questions just now, but this debate is going to continue over the coming months.